Now, what do you feel? Are we kidding ourselves with this idea that we would have food shortages if we went into biodynamic or regenerative farming? Is that like just a fallacy pushed by conventional farm or maybe, I don't know, big food in general? Because you do hear it a lot. And we're seeing it right now, egg shortages, right? Eggs. And most of those are conventional, right? But not many are pasture raised. And even then, those sort of words can be thrown around. But what are your thoughts on this idea that we would have food shortages if we tried to do organic or regenerative farming?
Yeah, it's incredibly complex because the illusion is in this idea of it being binary, as if it was one or the other. Or if you went down one path, it means that you would execute it perfectly, as opposed to the other. So the way that I look at it is nature never centralizes its solutions. And so anything that is leaning more into monopolies or centralization, so that could mean companies that are controlling big portions of the food supply. It could mean the just strategies in which we are growing food one way or another. It could mean the actual crop on the landscape that is a monoculture, right? Just growing acres and acres of corn or acres and acres of soy, which in many cases don't even have genetic diversity amongst themselves because they've been genetically engineered.
Right.
When we see centralization in nature, that always means you have either a higher chance for corruption on the business sense because it's more power in a smaller number of hands, or more instability and chance for collapse. So diversifying is always possible. The illusion is that there is no power amongst the individuals on a larger scale to have fully diversified systems. We know that, for instance, during World War II, we were growing food in our own backyards. This is possible because it's land, just like anywhere else. And with a little bit of attention and love and care, we were reportedly producing about 40% of the nation's food in backyard gardens. And now we've dropped that 40% number down to, I think it's 0.1% of the food of this country is coming from gardens because people aren't doing it. So one, they're not taught how to do it. And, they're not incentivized or encouraged in any way. They don't believe that they can. So we know that these solutions are possible on a huge individualized, diversified, situation. But we also see that if you are to force a solution in the wrong conditions, you can have problems. So if you were to, let's say, like in Sri Lanka, there's a lot of conflicting stories when they tried to, switch their entire country over to organic. Well, a lot of these farmers have built their systems around types of inputs like these chemicals. They know how to do it a certain way. It's not necessarily that these people are intentionally trying to degrade land if someone is using glyphosate. They're growing in the way that meets their bottom line so that they don't lose their farm. And most of these people are just barely getting by financially. So to pull out some of the cogs in their wheel that they're used to using in their system to manage it, and if you don't provide the right transition period, well, of course, that's going to fail. And so a lot of people were, not ready for this switch. And in Sri Lanka, there's a lot of people are using this as evidence that, hey, look, see, it didn't work. They tried to switch to organic, but the fact is it wasn't implemented well. Like you can have a great idea, but if you don't, have the right strategy, or if you force it, I mean, imagine somebody who's been on a certain medication for a long time that a doctor may have an idea that they could safely get off that medication. It's not usually the cold turkey approach of you're just going to dramatically switch your lifestyle and everything overnight, because there could be other, just complexities and risks. So I think we see this binary conversation, but the fact is, nature always has the way to do things that will have a more long-term benefit for both humans and biodiversity at large and wildlife at large. If we try to force it For instance, a lot of farmers, they can't even switch to organic if they wanted to in the United States, because it takes 3 years for that land to even be certified organic, for one. And they don't have the financial means to switch some of these processes. Some of it is cheaper, labor-wise and input-wise, initially, to keep those systems in place. So they're looking at the next quarter. How am I going to make ends meet? I can't afford to do this. So if we don't provide the right, financial support, educational support, resources, then they're not going to be able to transition successfully. But when those farmers are given those resources, over the 1 to 3 year mark, usually we start to see that their water inputs are lower. Wow, they're saving money now on water. We start to see that they don't need those inputs of those pesticides anymore, so they're saving money there. We start to see they're actually growing more abundant food, so they have a higher crop yield that is more resilient to excess heat. They're more resilient to flood and drought. So now their business is actually more resilient. Their finances are going to be more resilient. And then they can usually sell that food at a premium because it's, poison free and healthier, more nutrient dense, which a lot of people are looking for. So their business model does turn into more profit, but it's that gap. It's taking that leap, that it's not even about them taking a leap of faith. For so many farmers, they literally cannot do it without outside support. And we're in a system right now that financially subsidizes and encourages the degenerative models, when we really could have leadership that is pushing us towards diversifying and regenerating. It's actually not that hard of a concept. It's just that, of course, lobbying power and everything that is in place in this system is keeping those tax dollars. It's our own money. It's the citizens' money going to these systems that are eroding our own country and the planet. And it's really infuriating, because it does get a bit into the politics of it. You can't totally separate that.
Yeah, it is an infuriating type of topic when you see it, not just in, let's say, farming, but of course in medicine, in big pharma, where we encourage, or the top leaders, government, the policies encourage sick profits, meaning you will profit more if we keep people sick, rather than the opposite, which is completely true. I agree. In medicine, this idea, well, you wouldn't be able to make, no, healthy people spend more money on healthy things. They do more healthy experience and will spend more on food then, because they realize what they put into them, the quality matters that much more. So you could actually make more profit. But it's easier to keep someone sick and dependent on you and just keep that whole thing going.